Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the experiences and memories of playing tabletop games with friends and families can create. Today we're looking at Sword and Sorcery, designed by Simone Romano and Nunzio Cerese, published by Ares Games. I don't know a whole lot about Swords and Sorcery. I've heard bits and pieces there and there, but I do know it's a dungeon crawl that sounds really interesting. I actually quite like when publishers put these advertisements in here. I can see what other games I might be interested in if I like this game. I actually played this Quartermaster General rather recently at a con, and it was actually, for a classic older war game, Euro style war game, it was actually pretty fun. So yeah, so Sword and Sorcery, dungeon crawl, getting a little old at this point. I think it came out 2017, so about 8 years old. And it's been one I've been eyeing since it came out. I just haven't had a good opportunity to purchase it at a reasonable price. So I finally got it, and I'm definitely excited to try these out. It's the old school, punch out map pieces, so definitely going to be an exploration element. And lots of little tokens. It's, campaigns. This is actually not too bad component-wise for a campaign game. They can often get pretty cluttered with all the little components, but this one looks all right. Rulebook. It's a campaign, so it's going to be a involved rulebook. I mean, a dungeon crawl rather, because they do have to have your own rules as well as enemy rules, and it can get a little bit complicated. But this overall doesn't look too bad for a dungeon crawl. Yeah, a lot of small text, so it's not that many pages, but it's a fair amount of text. But it doesn't look like it'd be too hard to learn overall. And then storybook, I do not want to do spoilers, so I'll kind of glance at this, but I'm not gonna really go into detail on every page. But yeah, so it's kind of the standard old school dungeon crawl with your map setup as well as components. I do wish it would be more of an exploration, but that's hard to do in these old games where you didn't necessarily see the whole map right away. But unless you have an app, you can't really pull that off. I do like to see a book of secrets that's separate from the quest book, so you don't accidentally spoil it when you're reading through the quest setup. So that's nice. Different, I'm guessing these are the characters you can play as, and they're fairly traditional looking as far as the classes and race and all that kind of stuff. These are, I'm guessing, enemies you can fight. So we can basic enemies. And then let's get into these cards. These may represent random counters. I'm not sure. They kind of give you a setting and what monsters and the stats for those monsters. And we have another deck with lots of cards. Okay, we got some event cards. Let's look at these first. Okay, so yeah, mostly text on those. Then next we have, interesting, these, I don't know what those are. So we have enemy cards, power cards. Okay, so mostly text. So, and then enemy cards. So it looks like you'll have some special enemies that have extra powers. But these are the standard enemies. Okay, a fair amount of repeat art, which, I mean, I prefer each card to have its own art, but I understand there's a lot of cards here, and each piece of art can cost quite a bit of money. So, overall, I'd rather have repeat art than pay a significant amount more for the game. So I am fine with a little bit of repetition. Especially if it's essential. Especially if it's essentially the same card, and just adding more to get those percentiles of it coming up to be where they need to be. Okay, one more deck of cards. Looks like we have a random encounter deck. Okay. I actually quite like this art. So I think this is my favorite art in the game. The line art, the monochrome. I think it really stands out in monochrome. But I'm sure there's people that won't agree with me on that. Okay, weapons. Double-sided weapons. So one side is like basic and then upgrade. I don't know. And more weapons and items. This is probably stuff you get from the shop. Again, double-sided is different on each side. Not sure why. And then we have maybe rare items. Okay, armor. Yeah, I mean, the art overall this is decent. There's a fair amount of it, even though it repeats. It's still there's a fair number of unique art pieces, and I really do like the more subtle art like these and those line art pieces. We have, guessing is it character powers. So that's all the cards. Now we got some dice, we have a few other things to look at. But let's look at the various minis. Now it's always hard to get the level detail to show up on camera, especially when they're not, don't have a wash yet. But these are definitely pretty detailed minis. They are, again, the old school plastic, so it's, I can see a little bit of warping going on with these, but it's not too bad. And you just put it in some warm water. You can, if it's out of and you can easily bend it back in shape. It does look like there's more than one of each basic monsters, but they are slightly different. Yep, it's like these soldiers have crossbow or sword. Let's look at the next color. Yeah, these purple guys are really heavily armored. This guy kind of looks like, well, I was gonna say he kind of looks like the Lich King because of the helm, but not really. Well, that guy's pretty cool. Wouldn't want to come across this guy in a dark alley. These blues seem very similar to the green. You got your buff warriors, your wizard types, and a couple of each with minor variations. So that's blue. And let's move on to red next. See what we got in red. Wonder if the last two will be very similar. Yeah, red or orange basically had the same sets. So these, yeah, again, slight variations on them, but these might be the player. No? Yeah, could be. I don't know. Okay, these are definitely the player characters. Definitely a lot of detail went into these and a lot of focus. There. You know, so this older plastic doesn't do well with, you know, thin pieces, so they would have been better off having these a little chunkier. But this wolf definitely came out really nice. So yeah, I don't know why they have. Wow, that's a lot of detail there. He looks pretty cool. I don't know why they have different colors for the monsters, unless maybe it's like level. So, you know, one color's elite, basic, and you know, so forth. I definitely like the character sculpts. They do stand out. We got stands for standees for some reason. Yeah, I guess those are probably for the health dials. I'm assuming it's going to be dials based on that, seeing those. Okay, I like the look of these dice. Interesting symbology. So probably magic and defense. I always like to check underneath because I've definitely missed things underneath before, but nope, nothing underneath this time. And that's all the components for Sword and Sorcery. I'm really excited to play this, get it to the table. Lately I've been having more trouble getting campaign games to the table, but you know, at least I should be able to find time to try, you know, the first session. And I always do like a good dungeon crawl, but they take a fair amount of time. Yep, so that's Sword and Sorcery. I will get this reviewed at some point, but as soon as I can get it to the table. Well, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video.